Are you ready for Motorman's aerobic portion of the training? You're wondering probably, what does a bicycle have to do with a motorcycle? The fact is, they both have two wheels, and the physics for both of them are exactly the same. Now, I know a lot of people are afraid to practice their low-speed maneuvers on their motorcycle. A lot of times they'll go too slow. They're afraid to turn the handlebars from side to side, especially when making quick left to right transitions. Now remember, that quick left to right transition is very important because that's exactly what you're going to need when somebody violates you right away. So if you're on your motorcycle and you're afraid to turn those handlebars back and forth, and I see a lot of people having this problem, having that fear, the best thing to do is get that bicycle out. You know, the one that you brought for exercise that you never use, put some air in the tires, get the cobwebs off it, and get out and practice. Everything works the same way. Now on this bicycle, the rear brake is right here at the hand. At your right hand, you can pedal against it just like you would with the clutch throttle and using the rear brake on the motorcycle. You can practice all your transitions, your circles, your U-turns, every maneuver that you could do on the motorcycle, you could do on a bicycle. In fact, if you go to my website, you could download the practice guide absolutely free. You could use that same practice guide for the bicycle, just make the exercises smaller. You have to overcome that fear. This is going to help you to get the sensation that you'll feel when that bike transitions quickly from left to right. It should help you get over your leaning too because of muscle memory. The same sensations you'll feel on the bicycle, you'll feel on the motorcycle. It's great exercise, it's a lot of fun, and it's going to help you be a better rider, I guarantee it. This week we're going to talk about counterbalancing, or the proper body position when maneuvering the bike at low speeds. The idea is to keep your body straight up and allow the motorcycle to lean under you. Your head should always be level with the horizon. During extreme tight maneuvers, you might want to move or switch your weight completely to the high side. If the bike is leaning to the left, most of your weight should be to the high side on the right. Exactly the opposite when you're making a right turn. Whatever way the bike is leaning, you want most of your weight on the opposite side. You want to remain straight up and allow the motorcycle to lean under you. At high speeds, it's the opposite. We'll talk about that next week. We'll give you a little demonstration of what that looks like. Now, if you're making an extremely tight turn, switch your weight to the other side. Your head and eyes are up. The bike is leaning over. You put it right on the pegs of the floorboards. For your average turn, simply remain straight up, head and eyes level with the horizon. All right, I've talked about U-turns before, but I still see people having a problem with it. So here's the easiest way to do this, and we're going to show you this from several camera angles so you can't possibly screw it up. Now, between these cones, we've got 24 feet. That's your average side street. Most motorcycles turn well under 20 feet, so 24 feet theoretically should be a whole bunch of room. Now, if I'm coming down this way and I'm going to make a left-hand U-turn, and most of your U-turns are going to be to the left, you want to get your front tire as close as possible to the right side. You want to pick what I call a pivot point. That's simply the place you're going to start your turn. As soon as your front tire starts heading towards that pivot point, you want to snap your head and eyes and look as far back this way as possible. Never, not even for 1 second, should you glance at that side, because one split second's glance there is going to put the bike a foot or two in that direction. I'm going to show you what it looks like when you do it properly. Remember, you're in the friction zone, a little bit of pressure on the rear brake, and you're using your head and eyes. Here's a very simple braking exercise that you should practice. You don't even need any cones or anything to set it up. Just find a deserted road or a big parking lot like this. What we're going to do is we're going to swerve, then brake. Remember, you can't do both at the same time. If you try to perform maximum braking when the bike is leaning over, as in a swerve, you're going to low slide. You're going to go down really fast. So remember, when you want to brake, after the swerve, you straighten up the bike and then apply front and rear brakes. It should look just like this. This week I'm going to talk about counter steering. A lot of people are confused about this. I prefer the term push steering, but this is how it works. Above 15 miles per hour comes the need to counter steer or push steer. That simply means if I want to turn left, I must push forward on the left grip. When I push forward on the left grip, the motorcycle leans left and goes left. If I push forward on the right grip, it leans right and goes right. The only way for a motorcycle to turn at speeds above 15 miles per hour is by counter steering or push steering. So many people get confused about this. If you want to think about it this way, use the palm of your hand to practice this in a parking lot or an empty road. Just get up above 15 miles per hour and give a little push on the bars. You'll see as soon as you push that bar, the bike will lean left and go left. Push on the right grip, it's going to lean right and go right. It's very simple, and in fact, it's one of the few things that are instinctual about riding a motorcycle. If you've ever made a turn at speed, you've obviously counter-steered whether you realize it or not. But knowing how it works and knowing that if you do it quickly, the motorcycle will react extremely fast. In fact, the faster you go, the less of a push you're going to need on each of those grips. Now, I've talked many times about the proper use of the friction zone and the rear brake, but I still see some people having quite a few problems with it. Some of them believe they're using the friction zone, and they're really not. Now remember that the friction zone is the area of clutch travel between completely open when the lever is released and completely closed. It's that gray area in between. At low speeds, you must stay in the friction zone. At the same time, put a little power to the rear wheel with the throttle, put a little bit of pressure on the rear brake. Now if you think you know how to use the clutch, throttle, and rear brake, but you're not absolutely positive, here's a great test for you. What I want you to do is start turning circles with the motorcycle straight up, as slow as possible. In other words, you'll be doing the slow race, but in a circle. If you can do that, if you can make a 25, 26-foot circle with the motorcycle straight up at a very slow walking pace, you've got a real good handle on the clutch, throttle, and rear brake, i.e. the friction zone. The proper use of head and eyes is probably the most important of the 3 techniques that I teach. And that's because you need head and eyes for every type of maneuver, whether it be low speeds or high speeds. The faster and further you turn your head and eyes, the better. The reason we say head and eyes is because if I turn my head in this direction, my eyes are looking in another, it's not going to work. Now the reason head and eyes work so well is because wherever you turn your head and eyes, your hands are going to follow. It works especially well at low speeds, and it's going to really help you at higher speeds when on a winding mountain road, you need to turn your head and eyes and focus towards the end of the turn. Never look at the obstacle you don't want to hit. The place where most crashes occur are in an intersection. It's a very dangerous place. You have a vehicle that could be turning left in front of you, another vehicle that could be pulling out in front of you from the right. And here's something you may not have thought of. If you're at a big intersection where you're making a turn, let's say you're making a left turn, you happen to have 2 turn lanes. Be aware that the vehicle alongside of you could possibly pull into your lane. I would never ride directly alongside any vehicle, especially if I'm in the right lane and there's a shopping center or something to the right that might distract a driver, or where he might want to pull in. I guarantee you he's not looking for you. You've got to watch out for him. Stay back a little bit. Don't ride right alongside that vehicle. It could save your life. Here's a great way to practice your quick left to right transitions. Don't even need any cones for this exercise. It's going to help you use your head and eyes, the friction zone, a little bit of rear brake. What you want to do is find a nice clean parking lot like this with double parking spaces. You want to run them back and forth, left to right to left. The idea of it is to make the turns as sharp as possible. At first you could use 2.5 parking spaces or even 3, but eventually you should be able to get down to 2 spaces. You want to try to stay at the end here of the white line. Try not to go past this if you have to. Nobody's going to take any points off. It's just practice. But it's an easy thing to do. See a nice clean parking lot, pull in, spend 10 minutes practicing it. It'll be habit forming. All right, this week we're going to talk about the proper way to park. Sounds simple, but I see a lot of people having a problem, and this is why. Notice these lined parking spaces. Now imagine you're at a crowded bike night. There's bikes all up and down the road here. You see a parking space you want to pull in. I see a lot of people, if they're coming down this way, they try to either duck walk the bike or turn at a 90-degree angle to get in this space. That's a very difficult thing to do. inevitably what happens is the bike gets in there crooked. Now they've got to stop. The handlebars are pointed to the side. They hit that front brake and down goes the motorcycle. It's very embarrassing. But here's the easy way to do this. Now think about this for a moment. If you were in your car and you wanted to pull into one of these parking spaces and you're coming down this row here, the first thing you do if you wanted to pull in that way is you'd go to the left, because that's going to give you a lot more room to get your car pointed straight ahead. Well, it's going to work the exact same way on a motorcycle. If I swing my bike and dip it to the left before pulling in, I've got much larger distance, and the chances of me pulling it perfectly straight are very good then. And that way, when I use that last front brake for that final stop, the handlebars will be pointed straight ahead, and there's no chance of tipping the bike over. I'm going to show you what it looks like. I have a lot of people write to me and tell me they're having a problem stopping smoothly and stopping the bike exactly where they want it to stop. Some people tell me they even wind up tipping the bike over once it comes to a stop. Generally, the reason for that is they're looking down and they're hitting that front brake with the handlebars slightly turned. Remember, you should squeeze that front brake. The rear brake should be released just prior to putting your feet down. In other words, your final stop must be performed with the front brake. Squeeze that brake, don't snatch it, don't grab it. An easy way to practice this is to set up a little box like I have here. This is probably about 6 feet by 4 feet, and I'm going to start down at the end of the parking lot. I'm going to focus on this box about 3 or 4 feet above it and try to stop smoothly from various speeds right in this box. My head and eyes will always be up. I'm not going to snatch or grab that brake. It'll be a nice quick squeeze. Start at 10 or 15 miles per hour and work your way up. This week we're going to talk about proper body positioning for high-speed turns. Now, everybody's seen pictures or actual movies of Grand Prix races on motorcycles where you actually see the rider dragging their knee on the ground. They're leaning so far off the motorcycle, their knee is actually touching the ground. Well, most of you riding cruisers never having to worry about that, but the proper position is important. When the bike is leaning over, this is above speeds of about 15 miles per hour once the gyroscopic effect has taken place. You want to lean your body with the motorcycle. Your head and eyes should always be level with the horizon, but by pushing your weight this way, you're actually planting the tires better in the turn. Now, I wouldn't attempt to be dragging a knee on the street on any bike, or especially on a cruiser, but you can get over pretty far and still maintain the proper position and the proper balance for the bike as you're rounding a turn. More and more motorcycles are coming equipped, or at least have the option of ABS brakes. Now, here's how ABS works. Just like on your car, no matter how hard you push on the pedal, the brakes won't lock. It is a lifesaver on a motorcycle. So many crashes occur because people are used to driving their car, and then they get on the motorcycle, somebody pulls out in front of them, they slam on their rear brake, it locks the tire, and they slide on the ground. Everybody's heard the story about I had to lay her down. That simply means the person really doesn't know how to stop their motorcycle quickly, so they rely on slamming on the rear brake, and as soon as they do that, the tire locks up, they low slide, and they usually hit the very thing they were trying to avoid. Now, on an ABS bike, that can't happen, but it's important to use both front and rear brakes. Even on an ABS motorcycle, the front brakes offers at least 80% of your stopping ability. Now, I got a letter recently from a woman. She said she just bought a new Harley. It's got ABS, and she's really using those brakes very lightly. She's afraid of that ABS. Well, really, it's the exact opposite. ABS, since it won't lock, you could press as hard as you want on those brakes. Even in wet conditions or in a grassy area or sand, it's going to keep that bike up. It will prevent those tires from locking. I'm going to show you a real quick stop, and I'm going to put full force on both front and rear brakes. It's amazing how quick you can stop an 850-pound motorcycle. As you can see, the tires will not lock up with ABS brakes. Keep in mind though, you can only perform maximum braking even with an ABS equipped bike when the motorcycle is straight up. If it's leaning over, you can't use it. Bike's got to be straight up. If you are getting a new motorcycle, you have the option to get an ABS. Believe me, whatever it costs you, it's well worth it. In my new Ride Like a Pro DVD, we show you a step-by-step procedure to learn the techniques and to perform the exercises. It's step-by-step, so you can't possibly screw it up. In this video, we're showing you a lot of shortcuts because I know people are going to take shortcuts. They've told me they haven't practiced all the exercises and they're still having problems with certain things. So that's what we've showed you here. This is something you can do in an hour, hour and a half at the most of practice time. If you follow along in the Ride Like a Pro DVD and go step by step, you will be further ahead of the game and you'll only have invested 3 or 4 hours of practice time. Here, everything I've showed you, 1 hour and you're done. In fact, you could even think of this as a quick brush up once a week or once a month. Take an hour, go out to a parking lot, and as I showed you, there's plenty of things you could do simply using the parking lot lines to practice your head and eyes, friction zone, and rear brake. The more you practice, the better you're going to get. If you want to really ride like a pro, you got to put in some practice times. And on the new Ride Like a Pro DVD, we show you the actual motor officer course. That should be your eventual goal. You should easily be able to turn in 18 feet and perform all the exercises at 18 feet. The only way to do it is to put in the time, practice, get that head and eyes, friction zone, rear brake down pat.